There is something about that night that still digs under my skin, and I cannot shake it. Not even now. I was 19 then, and I worked part-time at a kids' arcade where laughter echoed off neon walls and balloons bobbed lazily above sticky tables. Usually, the place felt safe and familiar, and it hummed with life. Parents smiled and kids shrieked, and the clink of game tokens stayed constant and predictable and drowned out any sense of danger. You almost forget how silent and cold the world becomes once you step outside. That Sunday, I closed up alone, and one of the machines jammed during a birthday party, and we stayed late fixing it. The sun had long disappeared, and exhausted does not even cover it. My body ached, and my head felt fogged, and all I wanted was to crawl into bed. But taxis were too expensive, and buses were done for the night, and walking was my only option. My roommate's place was closer than my own, and maps said it would take a little over an hour, so I was too drained to care. And stupidly, I left my jacket behind, and the cold sliced into me like icy needles. My legs dragged, and my breath came out in fragile clouds. Each block grew darker, and the overhead streetlights buzzed faintly, but their glow barely scraped the ground. No cars moved, and no voices whispered, and only me stood in that hollow and unnerving emptiness pressing in from all sides. About 40 minutes in, I turned onto a long, narrow road squeezed between towering apartment blocks, and it was one of those places that feels perfectly normal under daylight, but turns into something else after dark. My phone buzzed weakly in my hand as the battery dropped to 20%. I pushed forward and my head stayed low while my brain fogged by exhaustion, but then it hit me. That feeling, a low twisting knot, sat in my stomach. The kind of instinct that whispers softly but firmly that something is wrong. I looked up. Under a flickering lamp stood a man, and he looked ordinary. Mid-30s, maybe, an average height, and thin, and dressed in a dark hoodie with his hands deep in his pockets. What chilled me wasn't his appearance, because it was his stillness. He wasn't walking, and he wasn't waiting, because he simply stood right by a bench and tilted his head slightly like observing prey. Maybe I was overreacting, and I always get nervous walking alone at night, since my mind can be cruel like that. But still, I picked up my pace. As I passed him, I felt it, and that weight was heavy, like his stare physically pressed against my shoulders. Not casual glancing, and not simple curiosity, because his eyes locked on me. I turned the corner, but my body didn't wait for permission, so I ran. I sprinted harder than I've ever run before, and my breath cut through my throat like sharp glass. My heartbeat slammed wildly in my chest, and I didn't know where I was anymore, because I just ran. So I thought to not stop and just keep going. After minutes that felt like hours, I dared to glance back. He was there, not running, but fast walking, and calculated and relentless, like he knew exactly how long he could let me burn out before catching up. His pace was steady and focused. My panic boiled into anger at him, and at myself, and at this entire situation, because I wouldn't freeze, not now and not ever. I forced my legs to move faster, and my vision blurred from tears and cold wind while my lungs screamed for air and my footsteps echoed violently against silent brick walls. Then finally, light appeared. Up ahead, a busier road bathed in artificial glow showed closed shops and neon signs, an empty parking lot, so civilization appeared at last. I stumbled under one of the brighter lamps while my chest heaved. I spun around. He stood far behind me now, maybe 100 meters out, and he stopped and stayed motionless. Then something odd happened, because he slowly lifted his arms in what looked like a helpless shrug, as if saying that I win. He turned and walked back into the black emptiness where he first appeared. It didn't make sense. There were no buses running that late, and no stores open, and no reason for him to have been there. Even now, months later, I replay it in my head whenever I walk alone, because the cold and the eerie stillness and that unsettling stare burn into my back. The same haunting question always returned. What if I hadn't run?